What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, some more head coaching news on candidates. We were supposed to have a video going out today, earlier in the day, discussing some of the stuff that was going on. And unfortunately, right before the video was about to go up, we heard more news about some of the stuff that is going to be happening for the Indianapolis Colts. So we cut that video. I'm just going to go ahead and make this video real quick and kind of explain everything that's going on because there seems like a lot. So we're going to go ahead and hop into this for the Indianapolis Colts head coach hiring process. So Adam Schefter tweeted earlier today that according to his source, the Indianapolis Colts will be narrowing their search down to 7 coaching candidates. So 7 coaching candidates are going to get a second interview from what it sounds like. There might be one more that gets thrown in there. I don't know. It'll be interesting to say the least, but they say they have limited it down to what the presumed number of candidates that they actually want to look at. So with that being said, of the 7 coaching candidates that they're looking to hear further from, a couple things come to mind. So there have now been 4 head coaching candidates who have been brought in or who are being or planning to be brought in for an in-person interview. Okay, so those 4 names so far are Dan Quinn, the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator for the Broncos, Jeff Saturday, the interim head coach for Indianapolis last season, and Raheem Morris, the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Rams. So far, these are the 4 coaching candidates who have been given requests for a in-person second interview. Okay, so going off of this list so far, there are these 4. I think one of the only ones that I think would actually that I'd enjoy of this group is Raheem Morris. I will admit I don't want Dan Quinn or Evero in here. Not because of, anything against them other than the fact that I don't know as much about them. Clearly, they're both really good defensive coordinators. But like I said, there are only a few defensive coordinators in this group of people that I would prefer to go with. And that was DeMeco Ryans or maybe a Raheem Morris because Raheem Morris has experience on both sides of the ball. But I'm not sure how I'm feeling about Dan Quinn and about Ejiro Evero on that. I don't know how I feel about that. But that's, of course, just the first 4. Or the first 2 that got them. The next 2 were Raheem Morris and Jeff Saturday. Jeff Saturday, again, I think a lot of Colts Nation feels the same way. We don't want Jeff Saturday here right now. It feels weird that the Colts are, doing that with Jeff Saturday. I don't really know what to feel or expect about that because Jeff Saturday, if you were serious about him not really being in the mix, then you would have done your first interview and would have just went on your separate way and would have just said, okay, your first interview, we got it. We don't really like the direction. We're going to go somewhere else. So this is clearly a concern if you're not a fan of the Jeff Saturday potential hiring, because obviously Jim Irsay is having some pull in this, and he is probably going to be one of the top 7 or 8 guys. And as unfortunate as that sounds, Jeff Saturday is in this mix. Don't know what that's going to entail, but we're going to have to wait to see who else is going to get interviews. And then, like I said, Raheem Morris, I'd be fine with him coming in here. I know a lot of guys, even in the local media, really have high praise for Raheem Morris. So don't doubt that Raheem Morris could do a very good job with everything going on. But going off of this, some of the main candidates that the Indianapolis Colts are probably looking to get are assistants and coaches who are in the playoffs currently. And this week, due to the rules, they said that the no coaches that are in the playoffs at the moment are allowed to partake in interviews this week. None at all. So, when you're talking about D'Amico Ryans, Brian Callahan, Eric Bieniemy, Shane Steichen, those kinds of guys, all guys who the Colts have had interviews with or are trying to get interviews with, we're not allowed to re-interview them. So I know a lot of people, especially on Twitter, were freaking out a little bit of, the 4 guys who are in the mix already for the Indianapolis Colts. And by the way, those 4 guys are supposed to have all their interviews done by the end of the week. So Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, maybe even Sunday, when those 4 guys should all have their interviews done in person. At least that's what we're hearing right now. And so that's why for some of the bigger names that we've talked about, we haven't heard them getting second interviews or announcing it because you're not allowed to do that right now. So we do want to pump the brakes a little bit. We don't want to go super crazy on it that there aren't a few names up there already, because I'm sure most of the rest of the names that the Colts want to actually take a second look at are in the playoffs this week, and you cannot interview them until the next Monday. And that includes, like I said, Brian Callahan, Shane Steichen, D'Amico Ryans, and Eric Bieniemy. Some of those names, okay? And so one other thing that we wanted to talk about with D'Amico Ryans, who, if you've been listening to Cody and I over the last few weeks, D'Amico Ryans has been a name that has been in our top 3 for the majority of the time. D'Amico Ryans situation. So he obviously canceled his interview with the Indianapolis Colts earlier this last weekend because he, had a few already and just wanted to focus on the game, right? And he did that for the Broncos as well. Okay, so that's that situation. But because of that, there's a developing situation about D'Amico Ryans. Okay, so Stephen Holder tweeted about this earlier, and I think it provides some great context for how it goes. He said, regarding D'Amico Ryans and the Colts, I was told that Indy would not be able to interview him until the 49ers season is over, even if they advance. Okay, so after this week, even if if the 49ers win, then the 49ers are basically prohibiting him from and regarding more context, we'll talk about that, but they cannot interview D'Amico Ryans until the season is over. Now, we're under the impression that D'Amico Ryans would potentially reschedule it, but we aren't 100% sure on that right now. Now, to give more context on it, which he goes into more detail. So again, shout out to Stephen Holder for this, because I'm glad that he provided this context. Says assistants who advance to the Super Bowl can participate in follow-up interviews next week, but not initial interviews. Ryans never had an initial interview with the Indianapolis Colts. It was planned, but later canceled. So basically stating that if you had an interview the previous week before that, then this next week, you're allowed to actually, call people to have follow-up interviews, right? So people like Brian Callahan, Shane Steichen, Eric Bieniemy, guys like that, those are guys that even if they advance, they've had their first interview with us, so that we are allowed to call them for a follow-up interview after the season is over. So they have time for that. But the problem is we can't do that with D'Amico Ryans because of the fact that he never actually had his interview with us. So now, if the 49ers were to win and go to the Super Bowl again, then you have to wait until the 13th of February in order to actually get an interview with D'Amico Ryans, who is the defensive coordinator for the 49ers. So it makes it a very tricky situation right now if you are DeMeco Ryans, because the Indianapolis Colts know that if DeMeco Ryans is one of their head candidates, they're going to have to wait on him for another 2 weeks in order to be able to even interview him the first time. And who knows if he's already made up his mind about where he wants to go, if he even wants to come to Indy, and if all these other guys that you're trying to hire end up going somewhere else because you didn't take advantage of them when you had the chance. So this whole DeMeco Ryans situation is very complex. If you're in a situation where you want DeMeco Ryans, then you're hoping that the 49ers lose this week so that Indianapolis can call him early this next week and schedule an interview and see if he wants to still do it. That's the best case scenario. So definitely a situation we're going to have to monitor with DeMeco Ryans. Some other news, Brian Callahan was talking to the press today. He mentioned that he hasn't heard back from the Indianapolis Colts about a second interview. So here's the thing. I'm not going to get too insane about it right now. Clearly, he's my head candidate. I would like to have him in here in Indianapolis. The reason why I did feel mad about it at first and why I still kind of am is, you interviewed him early in the week. You interviewed him earlier in the week. And because of the fact that you can call these guys to try to schedule another interview, but you obviously can't have the interviews during the week. You can't participate in that. So it stinks that, we're in a situation where Indianapolis had that interview earlier last week and didn't end up getting a hold of Brian Callahan before all this went down. So it is what it is. I just hope that regardless of what happens on Sunday, I really hope that the Indianapolis Colts will get him a second interview. I think that's very imperative to have someone like him coming back in for another interview for the Indianapolis Colts. Again, a situation we're going to keep an eye on, but as it stands right now, Brian Callahan had the one interview, but has not been reached out to by the Indianapolis Colts yet for a second interview. Again, something that we're going to monitor through the weekend, and then hopefully by early next week, we will hear something. And then the last thing that we can talk about before we move on, like I said, there are 4 guys who have had second interview requests: Dan Quinn, Eher Avero, Jeff Saturday, and Raheem Morris. So if the reports are true that the Colts are looking for 3 more guys for head coaching candidates for a second interview, I'm very curious who those other 3 would be. You have guys like I mentioned, Brian Callahan, who I hope they bring in. Shane Steichen, who I hope that they get a second interview with. Mike Kafka, who I think can do it. Eric Bieniemy is another one that they could bring in for a second interview. All those guys next week, you are capable of having a second interview with them all next week because of the fact that, because again, they've already had their first interviews with the Indianapolis Colts. They can schedule a follow-up interview next week. So they are able to do that. But the only one that's sticking out, like I mentioned before, is DeMeco Ryans. The only way that the Colts can get an interview with DeMeco Ryans as soon as next week is if the 49ers lose. That's the only way that they get a chance. If they don't get a chance, then based off of what Stephen Holder was saying, is that the 49ers won't let him have an interview until the season is over on February 13th. That's going to be the problem. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Let me know your thoughts on all this. This seems like a lot. And of course, we as the Colts don't want to wait too long, right, to start trying to get this going. But of course, this week, your hands are a little tied with everything that you can do with this week specifically. But I think, of course, they're trying to get some of those guys in that they can get in right now for those head coach opportunities. Let me know your thoughts on the candidates so far for the top 4 until we get more of them coming in. Who else is there that you guys would like to have the Colts bring in? But that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for all the support. Keep clicking on it. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, guys, go Colts.